All right, welcome to part 3 of week 11's lectures on educational leadership and orthodoxy. In this final section, we need to go through the most current of these articles by Wheeler. Three major issues that have to be focused on: junior faculty, student debt, and fundraising. They're some of the biggest concerns that we have at a seminary for continued health. Now, if you look at all three of these, what do they have in common? Junior faculty become senior faculty later on. Student debt keeps people out. Fundraising keeps the doors open, the lights on, and allows other people to come without too much student debt. Junior faculty are less expensive than full faculty or older faculty. This is kind of a vicious cycle of money that we don't always talk about, especially not to you as seminary students. It becomes essential, though, because this is a model that is clear and easy for you to see instead of the subtext of a Christian education course or set of offerings at a church. Let's start with junior faculty. So if we look at junior faculty, start considering just here at Erskine how many of the faculty members are set for retirement within just the next 5 years. And you see that more than half of the faculty are ready to retire. So the question becomes, when are we going to hire the new ones to replace them? Now, I don't know if I count or not, since I've been here 14 years, even if not at the seminary for all that time. Well, been at the seminary for most of that time as a student as well as teaching, so I don't know whether I get classified. But more importantly, some of our best and brightest are very much in the retirement age. How do you get the idea of new faculty so that you don't lose the institutional memory? Some of the most important faculty members to me as a seminarian were people like Dr. Melton. Dr. Melton was supposed to retire, and he's just kept on because he is great. He is one of those faculty members we all want to be like when we grow up. Well, if we ever grow up. But how do you replace the institutional memory, the knowledge of him directing Doctor of Ministry courses for all of these years? How could you replace someone like Dr. Gore, who has been dean for so long and knows so much like the back of his hand? How does that relate to the future of a seminary? People come here just to study under Dr. Melton or Dr. Gore or Dr. Eves or whomever it is. They don't always come to study under brand new faculty. So the reputation matters. Do you have people like that at your church? That someone comes to the Sunday school just because? My family has gone to several different churches since we've been in South Carolina, partly because of youth programs. One church that we went to in Greenwood had an excellent youth program, but only for older kids. When my daughter grew out of that and went off, there was really nothing for our son there. So we went to a different church that had a wonderful youth group for his age group. 5-year difference between them, that matters quite a bit though. And he grew up into that tradition. That's partly from reputation of the groups. And that's what faculty bring. We bring a reputation. This person is really hard, that person is really easy. No, that's not the important part of the reputation. This person is truly orthodox and speaks the word of love that shows that they understand Scripture. That person has delved into the Johannine texts such that he sees the paradoxes and the mysteries. Right? Each one of us has our little areas. Junior faculty have to be mentored and trained. Just like the Sunday school teachers or the new choir director which, yes, that is still part of Christian education if you're doing Christian education well. We go through and we think about how we want to consider who is going to be the next faculty member. The quote that's up here is important for us to think, what are the priorities that we have for the next faculty member? What skills do we want them to bring? Who do we want to help them grow to be, to help build the kingdom of God more fully, more worshipfully? That becomes the issue. Our faculty, or who we are. Remember, we talked in one of the previous lectures about the collegium, the idea of what is a college, what is the faculty of the seminary. That's who we are. That's who we are set forth. We are empowering people. No matter how great the education is, if people can't afford to go, they can't. So let's go to the next level. Student debt is a huge issue. In the United States, students owe a lot of money, and the statistics are in the article, so we don't need to talk about that. But stop and think. Can everyone afford to give up their work to come to seminary? One of our brothers here at Erskine has a wonderful story, and I had a similar one, but not as good. He spent 14 years in the army as a cook because he was sure God was calling him. God kept saying, "Feed my sheep." So he became an army cook. We don't always get it right. It took him a while, and he did a great job and became a fantastic chaplain and a great pastor. Did a beautiful DMin thesis and all, but this idea of debt, how many chaplains will tell you if it wasn't for GI Bill or MedCom or something like that, they couldn't afford to go to seminary? How many of us have to take out student loans in order to do seminary? How many of us can give up? And the reality is, as much as we try to make these online courses like this or in class, whichever you're in at the moment, we try and make them a good course, they still miss a lot of the direct interaction. I might look straight at the camera, but it's not the same as looking straight at your eye, because you can see me and my expressions, I can't see yours. So a lot of people are forced into doing the distance education. They already have a life, they already have a ministry perhaps, but it loses some of the interaction. It loses some of the, as we use the term, discipling that occurs. And then can they take the jobs that they want to or that they're really being called to? If you have $100,000 of student loan debt, can you take a job that only pays $30,000 a year when you have a family? You have to support, you have a mortgage, you have car payments, you have whatever else it is. You might even have this unfortunate desire to eat occasionally. You need money for that. So we start considering student loan debt as being something that limits the kingdom building. We start thinking about how many of us take out loans that we have a better life while we're in graduate programs like seminary. Many of us try really hard to build this in. We'll talk about fundraising in a minute, but stop and think. If you're an ARP here at Erskine, you only pay half price. Why? Because it's an ARP seminary. We need to do that in order to build the church, or at least the ARP flavor of the church. We have to make sure that there are more of you here to develop. We have relations with other churches that, come here and send students here, but they don't get the same benefits. There are other scholarships, and we are one of those great seminaries for scholarships. And the price tag is a whole lot lower here than most other places. And some places that you don't even get half the quality of education, you have a lot more cost. What does it mean if we cannot afford to answer God's call? That's a tough question, isn't it? Can you afford to not answer God's call is a better way of putting it. But how difficult is life going to be, and how much are you going to miss out through other aspects of your ministry? Can you be the best pastor if you have to work another job? Well, then you're not there to be the shepherd of that flock, and that is your job. It is a reality, though, for many people, and not all churches can afford to pay, and those churches are just as important as any other one. We talk about the firsts, the First Baptist Church, the First Presbyterian Church, the First Methodist Church, the whatever it might be. For Anglican students, we don't have firsts in the Anglican faith. We don't have firsts in the Lutheran faith. So the Lutherans also. You do have those big urban or suburban churches that pay really, really well. Are there times where we're all so desperate to serve them just because of the money and the prestige instead of the kingdom building and the serving of God? That's where student debt really comes in, limiting where we can take our call and serve God fully. Which brings us to fundraising. Fundraising is one of the least favorite things for most people to do. I've mentioned before about OPM, other people's money. This is where it comes in, rubber hitting the road time. The idea of, can we pay for the existence of this seminary just with your tuition? The answer is absolutely not. We cannot. We get a lot of money from the ARP Synod. We get a lot from the endowment, where people have been giving over the years, and they build up a fund of money that we live off of the interest from. That helps pay the light bill. That helps keep the doors open. Some of the salaries are through endowed professorships, but we have to bring in money to endow a professorship. So if we're bringing in, say, $1 million to $1.5 million to endow a professorship so that that professor gets paid from the interest, how much interest does your checking account make? How much does your savings account make? Let's say you have enough money to put into a Wellington fund or something good, the stock market. Is it always consistent? So the idea of fundraising is to shore up the deficiencies, to hold so that the money coming in at least matches, if not exceeds, the money going out. That's a basic part of budgeting. And in order to keep student debt low, we have to make sure that the fundraising is supplementing the cost. We also look at other ways of fundraising that is even more difficult than going out and say, please give me money. I need money for the seminary. That's easier than doing certain things like research grants. There are not a lot of research grants out there for seminaries. There are some. In certain areas, there are a lot. But at the same time, seminaries traditionally don't look for those. The idea of bringing in funds, if it's a capital campaign, just like at a church, we can say, we have this building fund, we need to build a new building. The library, a lot of people, if you're on campus, you understand the value of the library as a quiet space to read, to study. You understand what it's like to rub your fingers on the spines of books and feel that book. Yes, we will send the books out, but you don't have that idea of discovery of a book. If they're all electronic, it's maybe by title, maybe by author. Certain authors we really love, others not so much. The idea of fundraising is to increase the opportunity for the resources such that students don't have to go out and spend their own money. Question for you should be, why do we make you buy textbooks then? What do you think? hopefully you understand. It's that you are building up a library of things that you are going to need at your fingertips. You can just reach off the bookcase and pull down and say, I have access to it right here and now. Because the truth is, the way your memory works is you can remember where a page is a lot easier than you can remember a page number. You can remember what things written look like. You can't always pull it up on your iPad or your phone and access it just as easily. So we need to really focus. If we are fundraising to try and increase funds to hire more faculty, to hire some senior faculty as well as junior faculty, such that we develop the junior faculty better, we have to keep down the costs for your tuition. We have to increase the scholarships to attract more people as well. We have to make prestigious scholarships and advertise them. We have to advertise the seminary, period. Unfortunately, even the best seminaries in the world, I count Erskine among them, have to advertise. Do you think that Harvard has to advertise its divinity school? Yes, they do. Honestly, they do. Even though it's Harvard and everyone knows Harvard. I think that Erskine gives you a better education than Harvard, but I'm biased. I think that our faculty here have transformed my life in amazing ways. Yes, Harvard has to advertise, so they still have to have the fundraisers, or they can't continue to do the good things that they do. They're not exactly theologically the most orthodox place in the world, but that's neither here nor there. We don't want to have to cut. We don't want to have to limit. We want to make sure that there is money to have the Chick-fil-A suppers that we have in the main room at the seminary, so that as you come in, we get to know one another. We need to bring the college students over and talk to them about why you should consider coming to seminary here. That's part of what fundraising is for too. The problem is that we put so much burden on the idea of fundraising that we don't always see what is the logical consequence of our fundraising. Fundraising is not the only way to live, but that's how we treat it at most seminaries, not just here at Erskine. We are guilty of it, but most seminaries treat fundraising as the only source of money. Well, we have that little thing called tuition, but that's a minor part. We have other seminaries, Virginia Theological Seminary, Princeton Theological Seminary. Princeton and then VTS are the richest and second richest institutions in the world, per capita, any way you look at it. Princeton has over $1 billion, and there's about $750 million endowment for VTS. We have a couple million here at Erskine, and honestly, we should be very proud of that. But fundraising isn't everything. Fundraising should be a part of building goodwill. Fundraising should be getting people to invest in the future of the institution so that they start to recognize the mission of the institution is what they share. I've already mentioned this earlier in this week's lectures, but here's where it starts to fit in more and more to you. Think about these three things we just talked about. Junior faculty, student debt, fundraisers. How do you equate them to your church, to your ministry? You have junior faculty who are teaching Christian education. You have to nurture them, you have to pay for development, you have to pay for resources for them. Otherwise they become stagnant or they become burnt out. They become bitter at having to provide their own resources all the time, even if they don't say it. That's a real possibility. The idea of student debt transcends just the pastor. It goes to other ministers of the church, it goes to other people in the church. It precludes some people from even applying to scholarships. Student debt decreases? Yes. Some people start to get afraid to even apply for scholarships because what if they get it and it costs them more money because they wind up doing even more than they had planned. How many people do you know that have entered Erskine to just do a master's degree and wound up falling absolutely in love with a topic, doing a THM and then a PhD, or doing a DMin because they truly wanted to focus on preaching and evangelism, most common topics that we have. These ideas are so focused on what is happening in our churches. We have to think about the student debt or the church debt. How much can you go in the hole for to advance the kingdom, to build the new classroom and stock it well? And where do you do the fundraising that matters? If you don't think about the seminary structure and what is right before your eyes at the moment, you can't always think about what is happening in the churches, because it becomes so obvious to us that we miss the point. The reason why I'm including this in these lectures this week is to give you a new set of eyes. Think about what you are experiencing right now as a seminary student. Look for the commonalities and then apply them to the churches or whatever ministry you're in or going into. And all of a sudden, you'll find a lot more. Now, this topic normally elicits a huge amount of debate, so I'm sorry that the videos are very short this week, but I also don't want to beat a dead horse, because that would smell really badly too if you beat a dead horse, and what's the purpose of that anyway? Sorry, could not resist. Have a wonderful week. Look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.